Shadow Tor are in Looe, Cornwall, a town of two parts, east and west. It's the quieter side and undoubtedly the older of the two. Originally known as Port-by-Anne, the old town was a collection of inns, boat sheds and hovels, close to a big muddy slipway. Later the Georgians and Victorians gentrified and populated West Looe, increasing the town's size and status. But one building has seen it all, the jewel of old Port-by-Anne, the Jolly Sailor Inn. This photograph was taken in the early 1900s. And here is the same view today. The medieval building is over 500 years old. An ancient boozer, a safe haven from press gangs and the law, hence the name Jolly Sailor. Once a hive of smuggling activity, with the local gangs operating in West Looe, Talland, Polperro and of course Looe Island. Today West Looe is a neat time capsule. The old Buttermarket building proudly sits alongside the pub, often seen in historical photographs, of which there are many. Recorded through time in thousands of historical archives and holiday snaps, the Jolly is a famous spot which has drawn some famous faces. Here's Lana Turner enjoying some Cornish hospitality and learning to play darts from Sean Connery in the Jolly Sailor Inn. Other photographs reveal a shop, a remnant of a mysterious past. On the trail is Matt Bear Clark of Shadow Tor, walking down Old West Looe Hill. The hillside itself reveals a lot about the history of the town. An eclectic mix of Victorian, like the Salem Chapel, or much older, like the lumpy, wonky cottages and old inns, from the 16th century onwards.
Hello from the new excavation here in Badin.
Matt is no stranger to dealing with old mysteries, working in history and heritage, Plymouth University, as well as a regular face on Time Team, producing impressive 3D reconstructions of objects and whole time periods.
And Matt, our digital supremo, has been busy reconstructing.
We've made a replica.
Oh my goodness.
With history comes folklore, superstition, and quite often, ghost stories. Matt also has a keen interest in the paranormal and is here to investigate the Jolly Sailor and meet up with the owners.
I'm here in Prince's Square, West Looe, outside the Jolly Sailor, the town's oldest pub.
Matt has heard interesting stories about paranormal activity at the pub and even witnessed some himself in the old bar. It's also Matt's local for over 20 years. Starting with the guest rooms, it's time to dig deeper with landlord Gary Seymour.
So here we are in room 1 of the B&B, which was originally the Glendale building, which was a separate entity to the Jolly Sailor itself. It was built as a shop and a living quarters for a family who moved in the late 1800s. And in the early 1900s, the brewery bought it and it became part of the Jolly Sailor. So there's been a lot of activity in room 1. Initially, one of the main stories was when we just locked down in 2020, and as we shut I had to turn off the water to fix a cistern downstairs. As I left it overnight to drain and dry, I then came in the next morning and turned the water back on, and as I was walking up the B&B I heard a hissing noise from room 1. And opened the door, and here the tap was turned on full and it was spraying water everywhere. And there was water all over the floor. Now, if we'd have left it on after lockdown, there would have been a massive water bill and there would have been great floods. So for that tap to turn on, it would have had to have turned on after I'd turned the water off and the doors were locked.
A troublesome entity or a spirit trying to draw attention maybe? The guest rooms are situated in what would have been the accommodation for the shop owners from the mid-19th century onwards. The rooms are in the taller building, to the side of the pub.
So we were advised by a guest who was staying here that she spent the night in this bed and she felt a presence behind her, and she said she felt it climb into bed and push against her. For the rest of the night she had lots of nightmares, and she drew us a picture of this young girl with curly hair on a dolly peg, which was a bit bizarre. She said that's all she saw all night, this young girl with curly blonde hair with a dolly peg face. Hi, so we're in room 2. There's a lot of activity here. There's supposed to be a hanged man who hangs from the ceiling in the middle of the room, and through into the bathroom there are a lot of spirits that refuse to come out of that room because of the hanged man.
Eerie stories and strong impressions seem to linger in room 2. But it is important to note that mediums and sensitives can only form exactly that, impressions. We could not find any articles regarding a suicide or hanging in the Glendale, either as a shop or as guest rooms. But that doesn't mean it didn't happen, just any records are lost or never taken.
So this is room 3, and again there's been much activity in here. I will leave you with my wife Zoe to explain the details of the situation, but it involves a woman in her 60s.
Hi, I'm Zoe Seymour and I am the landlady of the Jolly Sailor Inn in Looe. For me personally, I've had quite a few experiences, but one of my first was when we stayed here one night or two when we were renovating one of the rooms in the flat, and I woke to a face over mine, quite in my face, which I've never experienced before in my life. And Gary was with me and he was fast asleep, and it was of a lady of probably 60s, 70s, didn't look scary at all, just normal looking lady with curly short hair. And the moment I realised I was looking at her, she just disappeared. However, a couple of years later, I did bounce into somebody, or that it felt like that, in the bar, where I was collecting glasses. I turned around and it was a big black shape in front of me, which at that point I thought, I'm sorry, I've just bumped into you. And the people around me just looked at me like I'd gone crazy and said, well, what are you doing bouncing around the bar? And I said, there was a person just stood in my way. No, there wasn't. But those are my only 2 encounters of actually bumping into someone or seeing a physical form. However, my son has as well. He was working for us in the kitchen one day, and around the same area, the room we were sleeping in, room 5, he said that there was a man that had come up the stairs and had gone into the gents' toilets, and he came down and said, Mum, we're not open yet. Why are there customers in the pub? So he went upstairs, and you can watch him, we've got video evidence of it, you can watch him go into the men's. He stands for a moment looking around thinking, well, there was definitely someone that went in here and there's no one that's come out. So that's strange, and as he walks out of the toilet, the door slams quite viciously behind him with a big bang, and you can see him in the video jump. And oh my goodness, what just happened there? And he scuttled back down the stairs and went, Mum, there was someone in there, but there's not now. And we did look back on the video and we couldn't see any shapes, any figures, nobody else, just Tyler. But he was absolutely convinced somebody had gone in there.
An eerie encounter? It's not just the family who've experienced the unexplainable.
Okay, so I'm asleep on my side. I feel 1, 2, 3 prods onto my left foot, and when I sat upright there was an indentation in the duvet above my left foot. So I just said, okay, I know you're here, and that was essentially what happened in this room, room 3. In the office, and I went out to the toilet and I could smell pipe smoke. And there's nobody in the building. Shouldn't have been anybody here, wasn't anybody here. I nipped to the loo. I can smell cigar smoke. Awesome.
So this is room 4. We've had many mentions of activity in this room. A lot of it is electrical. Things like the TV won't work, the TV resets itself, the lights are flickering. Quite recently we had a couple who said they put their phone on the bed, and as they were by the door it had thrown itself onto the floor. We've had people say they had a phone and a pen on the desk over there, and it just flipped off onto the floor. So there's been lots of perhaps poltergeist activity, more physical movement and flickering of lights.
Passing through to the old pub, Gary continues his tour.
So here we are outside the ladies' toilets. Not as weird as it sounds. We have a spirit that walks through the ladies' toilets in the corridor. There's a lot of local ladies that won't go into the toilet because they feel this presence. As far as I'm aware, he's not an aggressive spirit. He's very much a David Niven style hello ladies kind of spirit. But also, when we were staying in the office, when the flat was being renovated, I was there at 1:30 in the morning on my own, just getting some rest, and I heard this cough. I didn't investigate because I was in bed and I was comfy, and I thought I'll just leave him to it. But yeah, he wanders the corridors and sits in the ladies' toilets, and the ladies sometimes get a bit uncomfortable with going in there because they can feel something but they don't know what they can feel exactly. So we're here in the bar, the main bar. This is the main part of the pub, which was built in 1516. And when we first took over, we had a paranormal expert come and explain about the spirits in the pub, in and around the pub. She thinks we've got about 12 or 13 different spirits based throughout the whole of the pub. However, she was in here, and she was stood in this spot. She looked over there and she said, "There's a man over there, and he's got a hat on, and he's sat down with a pint in his hand, like that, just looking down like that." A couple of weeks later, we discovered a picture, and this is the picture of a fireplace in the Jolly Sailors. And as we can see here, there's a man with a hat sat down with a pint pot. So here we have the fireplace where the gentleman was spotted. Now in 2020, when we did renovations over the lockdown period, we discovered this fireplace after removing some of the render. And as you can see, we have the brick along the top and the beams running across or away from the fireplace, I should say. So this is obviously the place where it was, and we often have dogs that come and stare at this corner of the wall, and that kind of, before we discovered the fireplace, it kind of, made us think, well, what's there? But obviously now we realise it's the gentleman with the pint pot.
Hi, I'm Laura. I work at the Jolly Sailor in Looe. And we were just stood at the bar and we were chit-chatting about the day, and I walked up the bar towards the glass washer, and Bella wasn't far behind me, and all of a sudden we've just heard this almighty smash of glasses. We've both turned round and all the glasses on the bottom shelf had just all crashed out. They all just flew out like a set of dominoes, and it was absolutely bizarre.
Compelling evidence caught on the pub's CCTV, and it's not the only time. Watch the menu on the empty table. Now watch this chap's pint. Both these events happened on the same night. Evidence of an unseen force, very active.
There is a unique anomaly that occurs in this area, and that is when our locals sit here, they feel a drip coming from the ceiling, and it lands on them and it makes a physical wet mark on them. However, on investigation, we check the ceilings, check the beams, there's no water from anywhere, and this occurs randomly. Every so often somebody will sit there and go, "I've been dripped on again," and on check-in there's nothing. In the main room here, we've had reports from the rooms above that they've heard chairs moving at 3 a.m. and things moving about. And when we come in the morning and we check, and they've told us none of the chairs have been moved, there's no sign of activity, but they insist they've heard chairs being dragged along the floor.
So collecting glasses off of a table, I have a glass collector in my hand, and I was chatting to some customers, as you do, about the history of the place, and my glass carrier was full, and so I couldn't put any more glasses in there, and I was holding it steady, I was chatting away, and all of a sudden one of the glasses threw itself out onto the floor, at which point the customers saw it. I went, "Oh my goodness, we didn't touch that, what happened there? I don't know." And my staff member, it was Chloe actually, she said, "Oh, you know, you've broken a glass." Oh, came over with a dustpan and brush, and she's clearing it up, bless her, and I'm chatting away still to the customers, and I'm thinking I'm gonna have to hold this steady now. And there was still an empty glass on the table, so I picked it up and I put it back into the glass carrier where that last glass had just fallen out, and thought, right, that's in there secure, that's not going anywhere, and I'm gonna hold this steady now. I'm really conscious that this is not going to move. And in front of everybody's eyes, it flew itself out of the basket again. And at that point, all my customers got up and said, we're off, we're done. And I said, we're finished with this conversation, because clearly whatever's going on in this conversation, the ghosts don't want to talk about it, so we're going. And that was my encounter of twice in front of customers, of glasses coming out of the carrier and breaking. So
more activity in the Glendale side of the pub, a hot spot for phenomena and worth investigating. Out the back, across the old alley, the pub's cellar is in a separate old building. The harbour laps at these steps during the high spring tides, very much like the past.
So we're here in the cellar. We had a young woman come to us, and she was sat in the pub on table 6, and she introduced herself as Gypsy Rose Lee. She said to me, "I've got a Mary here who is quite frustrated with the hole in the floor and the pipe work." Now I went cold. She didn't realise why I went cold, so I brought her into here to explain why. So when we first took over, we had to have the python lines replaced, which are the pipes that take all the beer to the pub. So what we had to do was get somebody in to dig a hole into the ground in the cellar, and then we had to wait about 3 weeks before the brewery could come back and replace the pipe. So when I brought her back into here and said, "Look, this is what's happening," she said, "Yeah, this is what Mary's on about," and that to me speaks more volumes than pretty much a lot of things in this place. The fact that a complete stranger who knew nothing of this hole in the ground in a completely separate part of the pub knew about this. So what we want to know is, who's Mary? So we've caught several things on CCTV, one of which was the doors opening all by themselves. I pulled up my manager and said, "You've left the doors open." And we came down, checked the CCTV, and we both stood in this room and watched as the doors just opened by themselves. They're quite sturdy. We've had people come and push on the door, press on the door to see if they could open it, and it's very difficult to open.
With so much activity caught on camera, the Jolly Sailor is a prime candidate for a professional, ongoing paranormal investigation. Taps turned on, figures seen, objects move or get broken, unexplainable drips, chairs moving in the night. As Looe's oldest pub, a survivor of time and modernity, it is perhaps foolish to think that some old-timers may just want to linger, as conscious spirits or just echoes. But it's the experiences of those that live and work there that is most compelling.
So we are quite used to it now, but I think if you ask anybody that works for me and Gary, you will get a story out of every single one of them, including our children and our parents and our family. So yeah, this is the Jolly Sailor, 1516, so much history.